I'm Bill Carson from North Plains Electric Co-op in Perryton, Texas. Welcome to Along Those Lines.
Support for this podcast comes from Sensus, who would like to share the idea that not all AMI networks are built the same. See how Sensus is simplifying the move from legacy PLC systems to RF wireless at sensus.com/PLC.
Hi, everyone. I'm Scott Hoffman. This is a podcast about electric cooperatives, the work they do, and the challenges they face. If you follow or work in the electric utility industry, you've probably heard the term beneficial electrification. But do you actually know what it is? And would you be able to explain it to a friend or a colleague? Well, we're going to hear from 3 experts on this topic, and by the end of this podcast, I promise you'll be able to answer yes to those questions. Today we have Keith Dennis. He's NRECA's Senior Director for Strategic Initiatives and a key national advocate for beneficial electrification. Also, Jeff Haas, the leader of Member Technology and Innovation at Great River Energy in Maple Grove, Minnesota, and Sam Adair, Manager of Marketing and Member Services at Coles Moultrie Electric Cooperative in Illinois. Keith, we'll start with you. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so beneficial electrification. Can you give us a quick summation of what beneficial electrification is?
Sure. So the short version is that beneficial electrification is the use of electricity in end uses that would otherwise be powered by fossil fuels, like natural gas or propane or diesel or gasoline. I have a longer version because the frequently asked question I get when I say beneficial electrification is, Keith, isn't all electrification beneficial? So we have a definition that's kind of technical for policy folks, and I'll just go through that with you right now. The application of electricity to end uses that would otherwise consume fossil fuels, like natural gas, propane, oil, or gasoline, where doing so satisfies at least one of the following conditions without adversely affecting the others. Saves consumers money over time, benefits the environment and reduces greenhouse gas emissions, improves product quality or consumer quality of life, or fosters a more robust and resilient grid. Now that's a mouthful.
That is.
I'll give you an explanation of why this is the definition. For beneficial electrification to be seen as something that policymakers are going to support, it needs to be broad so that everyone sort of agrees, yes, this is beneficial. We can put money towards this. We can put policies that promote this. Mm-hmm. If you're saying this saves consumers money and doesn't harm the environment, basically everybody would say that's beneficial. If you're saying this helps the environment and doesn't cost any money, basically everybody would say that's beneficial. When you start saying things again like this is going to cost consumers money, but it will help the environment a little bit, you start getting into some trade-offs and then different value judgments.
Right.
But basically this definition, if it's doing at least one of these things and not harming the other, you could say it's beneficial electrification. Switching to electricity can reduce greenhouse gas emissions over burning gasoline in your car. So that would be an example of beneficial electrification. It's benefiting the consumer by saving you money. It's benefiting the environment by reducing the amount of greenhouse gas emissions.
Let's go into that a little more in depth. The addition of renewables to the grid. Tell me how, if I buy an electric car, I'm hooking into that development and how that is creating a beneficial environment.
Well, it might help to start from sort of the beginning of this concept. The reason why folks are interested in electrification is because a lot of folks are concerned about the climate and greenhouse gases. And what environmentalists did and academics and other institutions is they started looking at how do we get to a low greenhouse gas environment. And they started to see that the only pathway to do that was through electrification of more end uses. Burning gasoline in vehicles all across the country or burning natural gas in homes all across the country was just not going to get us there. Mm-hmm. Using something like an electric vehicle taps into the fact that the emissions in the electric sector are going down over time. Since 2005, the electric sector's greenhouse gas emissions have reduced by 27%. So if you think about just the fact that something is plugged into the grid, it's getting greener and greener over time, year after year after year after year. So if I plug in a car today, next year it's going to be even greener than it was this year. And this year it's 27% greener than it was in 2007, even if I'm driving it the same exact way. So basically you're tapping into the fact that the grid is getting greener. And that's largely because we're switching different fuel sources. So we're switching from a coal-heavy environment to a more natural gas, more renewables like solar and wind.
So I think we've kind of established what beneficial electrification is and how it is implemented. Why is it such an important thing now, and where is it going in the immediate and distant future?
Well, I think in general, you'll find a lot of folks who are fans of electrification. Electrification has done a world of good for the entire world. But you do have a new group of stakeholders who are sort of new to the electrification idea, and those are really the folks who are concerned about the environment. And they've come to the conclusion through research, and I think there's actually a consensus on the fact that we need to increase electrification if we're going to reduce emissions. Whether or not you subscribe to that belief, there's a whole set of folks who really strongly believe that this is a huge part of the solution to what's seen as a big problem. And so that's why it's a big deal. So whereas perhaps in the past, environmental groups and folks that were interested in electrification were sort of on the opposite end of the spectrum, they've become married in this idea that there's a win-win here, that you can promote electrification, which is good for perhaps revenues for an electric co-op, which is perhaps good for quality of life and the consumer, and it's good for the environment. And so when you've got those two groups working together, you can sort of look at policies that are a little bit different that really align for that win-win situation. One of the things that we've done is form a nonprofit called the Beneficial Electrification League, and that's started with the support of National Resource Defense Council and NRECA. So those are two groups that maybe are not in agreement on all things, but are in agreement of electrification, and that in itself says a lot.
It's a little miracle.
Maybe it's the right place at the right time, right? And it's the right time for electrification.
Keith, thanks so much for being on the program.
Thanks for having me.
Next, we're going to hear from Jeff Haas from Great River Energy, but let's pause for 1 minute to hear from our sponsor of this episode.
This month's Along Those Lines podcast is sponsored by Sensus. You might be surprised at how far AMI has come since the early days of power line carrier systems. It's not just about meter reading anymore. Today's RF wireless networks quickly identify outages, measure end-of-line voltage, and give you the power to make informed, data-driven decisions. See how the proven PLC to RF wireless blueprint from Sensus is designed to simplify the migration to next-gen AMI at sensus.com/PLC.
I'm Bailey Lefthand from Central Electric Cooperative in Stillwater, Oklahoma. You're listening to Along Those Lines.
Welcome back, everyone. Jeff Haas works very closely with his co-op membership to help them understand the value of using electricity in new ways. Jeff, thanks so much for being here.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
So Great River Energy has been promoting beneficial electrification for a long time. Where would you say that started? What was it that got you involved in this issue?
I would say it was likely, as we started looking at our load management program. So it predates the term beneficial electrification, but really when we were looking at the ability to really utilize the nighttime load through our water heating programs and space heating programs that have allowed us to really shift members' total consumption from any daytime activities, daytime consumption, I should say, to entirely nighttime consumption in the form of stored water, stored electric heat. The primary benefit at the time was really to utilize our facilities to their maximum levels. And really now we see that as still providing benefits in the form of the market arbitrage between the on-peak prices during the day and the off-peak prices at night. So I would say that that's kind of where we started, focusing on what I would say when you use electricity matters, and that being kind of the original focus of beneficial electrification, because that allowed us to really have more competitive pricing for those products.
Explain that a little more. How does the time that you use electricity, how is that relative to beneficial electrification?
I would say that first and foremost, there's a cost difference between on-peak energy and off-peak energy. And when we look at the consumption patterns of something like, say, a water heater, there's a very high coincidence of an uncontrolled water heater with our peak demand times. And so by either controlling that and shifting it to an off-peak period, and currently we have programs that only allow those units to charge between the hours of 11 o'clock and 7 a.m. Mm-hmm. So it's 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. That allows us to really avoid any exposure over those peak periods. And that's when we typically see the highest prices in the market. We see, the more expensive generators running to meet that demand. And by avoiding that, we can really lower that wholesale cost of that power.
Right. And then the whole idea being that if you were running a natural gas furnace or you were running a natural gas water heater, that would not be an option. I mean, you would burn it when your unit came on and that would be it. But by going electric, you have this option, particularly with Great River Energy, where you guys have this water heater control program that's so robust.
That's correct. When you think about a water heater and the way it operates, it's really kind of a fairly simple unit. If the thermostat temp isn't met at a particular time, it tries to meet that thermostat temperature. And if you don't control it the way that we have, you really see this morning use and this evening use trying to be refilled right away, when really there's oftentimes ample capacity in that water heater to shift that use to other time periods. And
Right.
that really is something that provides system benefits for us and for all of our members, really.
What was the original impetus for getting involved in this? Was it a regulatory thing because you knew regulations were coming down on your emissions? Was it economic? Was it pressure from members?
I think it was largely economic, and really economic and technology. The evolution of technology has really opened up a lot of potential applications for beneficial electrification. And certainly today we see the biggest economic possibility around electric vehicles. When we see the capacity of batteries in those vehicles being able to meet the needs of consumers, there's a clear economic benefit between the price of gasoline and the price of electricity as a fuel for electric vehicles. There's still an early adoption price that's expensive, and some of that is being resolved, through federal tax credits today. But we're also seeing the trends of battery prices coming down. And so there's really a lot to look forward to, especially as we see the wholesale power prices continuing to kind of decrease in our market. For Great River Energy, we're in the Mid-Continent Independent System Operator wholesale market, and wind has just had such a profound effect on the pricing in the market today. And those trends continue as more and more utilities are adopting wind energy. We're seeing those wholesale prices in the market, of course, come down, and we see a long-term benefit from that for our members.
What are some other things that Great River Energy is doing that are directly relatable to this beneficial electrification idea?
I would say that, when we look at the biggest energy end uses in a home today, and this is in our area in the upper Midwest, we see homes really about 20% of the energy consumption goes to a water heater. About 50% of the energy consumption in a home goes to the space heater. What we don't have as much visibility into today is, how much of a household's energy use is really associated with transportation. And so we don't have the same visibility that we have with household energy consumption on those items, but we know those are the biggest items that impact a homeowner, and they're also the items that have the highest propensity to be either fueled by propane, natural gas, or other fuel types. And so those are really the areas that we're focusing in on. And so apart from electric thermal storage space heating and electric thermal storage water heating, we're also focusing on the application of heat pump technology. Ground source heat pumps have certainly been around for a long time, and we've seen some adoption of that. But air source heat pumps are an emerging technology that are increasingly capable of operating down at lower and lower temperatures.
Mm-hmm.
So when we think about the number of hours, and we often lament how cold it is up in Minnesota, but those extreme cold periods, even though they feel like they last forever, are actually a pretty small fraction of the total number of hours in the year. Whereas when we look at the heating hours that occupy the time periods that are either at 0 degrees or up to 45 degrees, where you have a significant number of space heating hours as well, those are temperature ranges that can certainly be met by an air source heat pump today.
Part of your job is to go out and explain to members why it is you're advocating for this. And you can tell that from your answers that the things that makes the concept understandable to them is the home heating stuff and the things that they're using every day. When you go out and talk to a member, how do you explain it to them? What's the way in for you to get them to understand?
Yeah, I think one of the ways that we go about it is to demonstrate where those benefits come into play. And it may be that, households are looking for more convenience. They're looking for, some certainty around, the fact that that heat is going to be there, that my tank may not run dry, that I won't be exposed to, some volatile pricing. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we're talking about, comfort. But I think ultimately there's an interest in efficiency, and efficiency is something that, resonates with members across the board. And so to say that, the maximum that you're going to get with a fossil system is probably going to be a 96 to 98% efficient space heating system. We have products today that will deliver space heating at a comfort level at an efficiency that it far exceeds that. It's something that is intriguing in captures their interest. And to say that, oh, by the way, we can look at ways in which you can augment your current space heating system. So you might only need to buy that propane fuel in the summer months, and you won't have to worry about it, through that. And that's something that also resonates with people.
You guys have kind of covered the landscape in terms of beneficial electrification from an outside standpoint, but what are you guys looking at in terms of what's next? Is it more agriculture?
We're really, interested in indoor agriculture, and we have some pilot activities that we're going to be focusing on to really demonstrate how a system might work. We also have seen indoor ag kind of taking off somewhat naturally, and we have facilities in our member service areas that are producing greens. There's a facility that's producing shrimp. There's facilities that produce tomatoes indoors using electricity, and the benefits of that, I think, substantial in terms of the avoided delivery cost of transporting these products from traditional places.
And take 1 second to explain how that is responsive to beneficial electrification. Is that a lighting thing, or are there electric specific components to that kind of setup?
That's really, indoor agriculture it's often lighting that's driving some of the electrified aspects of it, but it's also the pumps, the conveyance systems, the entire process to harvest it. Oftentimes you're harvesting it with robots or other devices to basically remove the human element. And those are the things that help to improve the productivity of these facilities and really lower the cost overall when you look at it over the long term. But yeah, from an environmental standpoint, the reduction in shipping and then the increase in quality. When you think about the amount of time that it takes to deliver, a head of lettuce from California to Minnesota, that's time that is somewhat precious from a freshness standpoint.
Right.
And so to be able to deliver higher quality products that last longer on the shelf, we're reducing spoilage, we're reducing substantial shipping cost and shipping emissions. Those are the things that are really intriguing and give me a lot of optimism about how that is going to continue to play out and expand throughout our service area.
Jeff, thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Thanks, Scott. It was a pleasure to be on.
Next, we're going to bring in Sam Adair from Coles Moultrie. He's going to talk about an interesting beneficial electrification project the co-op worked on with Charleston Stone, a local limestone quarry with a rock crushing operation. Sam, set the stage for us here. What was going on at Charleston Stone before they switched to an all-electric operation?
Charleston Stone contacted Coles Moultrie as they already started their project. They knew that they wanted to move to an electric rock crusher because they have one at their other facility. They installed this old rock crusher diesel unit in 1999, and with all the maintenance and the cost of running the machine, they wanted to go ahead and move to a primary rock crusher that is electric. And so that's when they contacted us. Obviously, they were going to have to upgrade their system, upgrade their electrical infrastructure, and that's whenever Coles Moultrie got contacted and got involved.
So did Coles Moultrie see this as a beneficial electrification project at the time, or were you really just trying to help out a member who needed some help with their operation?
Yeah, once we saw this, this was absolutely a beneficial electrification project. We saw the added load, which was a good thing to us. However, we wanted to see how we could help this member out as well. So if the added load for Coles Moultrie meant lowering the cost for Charleston Stone, it was a perfect match. And so we wanted to make sure we were doing our due diligence on our side, that it completely paid off for them in the long run. And so this was really a win-win, not only for the cooperative, but also for the member. This also helped the electric rock crusher would have less downtime, so they had more sales that way, or made more money that way. So yeah, it was a win-win.
And Coles Moultrie actually helped Charleston finance this new equipment through a federal pass-through loan program called Red Leg. Tell us a little bit about that process.
Once we knew that Charleston Stone wasn't involved, we contacted the USDA to see if we could get them a 0% interest loan, to which we had a grant writer come in and fill out the paperwork for them. We did get awarded a $400,000 USDA Red Leg loan through the cooperative to them at 0% interest, and that's when that actually gave them the ability to add options onto the rock crusher that they were not going to have in the beginning. They were going to finance their rock crusher without that funding. However, with that funding, they were able to upgrade that rock crusher.
You also worked with a local university to help analyze the economic impact of Charleston going electric with their rock crushing operation. How did that come about, and what kind of assistance did the university give you?
So we were able to get a hold of Dr. Peter Liu over at Eastern Illinois University, which handles most of their renewables area. And he was able to gather some students so that we could show when and where the payback was for this electric rock crusher over a diesel rock crusher. The data showed that it would be a quicker payback and better to run at electricity than diesel costs. Here in the state of Illinois, we have higher diesel costs, especially since the electric rates have been steady. So we're able to show not only the instability of diesel, but also the stability of electric market, and show that we have that payback not only sooner, but it's also more of a flat line if anything does get adjusted.
So how was it working with Charleston Stone? Was it a good relationship? Did they appreciate the work you were doing with them?
When I first started in the key accounts role, there wasn't a whole lot of communication between Charleston Stone and Coles Moultrie. And so when we started to meet with them, we really built a relationship, and I believe that's why Charleston Stone felt that it was perfect to contact Coles Moultrie rather than just go it alone. And so once we were able to do that, we had them on board, they got us on board, and we really collaborated and worked well together.
So Sam, the electric rock crusher has been in operation for about a year now. How's it going? Do you have numbers? Are you able to give an assessment of whether it's improved reliability? Do you have any data on whether it's saved money for Charleston and the co-op?
Yeah, they've actually been running the rock crusher for about 16 months. It's been going well for them. We've been over there and watched it run. It functions perfectly. They've had very little downtime with it. That was one of the big advantages over the diesel, was the downtime that they had before it. Obviously, their load has gone up, which their electric bills have increased. But we have to compare that to the decrease in the diesel costs. So Coles Moultrie has actually gained quite a bit of load since it. We've sold more kilowatt hours. That's a benefit to the cooperative. But the long benefit to the member is that their diesel costs have gone way down. Their diesel bill far exceeded what their electric bill is now, and it is a lot more stable. With the cost of diesel going up and down, you can imagine how that can impact a diesel rock crusher, especially with all the diesel that they put in their other trucks and stuff like that as well. So we're able to flatline those costs. We're able to mitigate any ups and downs by supplying them with a flat rate.
Does Coles Moultrie have any other beneficial electrification projects like this in the works?
So one thing that I've really learned from it is there's beneficial electrification everywhere. This started on the high scale with the commercial account. I've taken this and I've gone down to the members level, a residential accounts level, and actually made sheets so that our members can see what the advantage of electricity is over propane or natural gas or fuel oil, or what geothermal has over heat pumps or electric furnaces. We can take this data and use it on a large scale, but we can also step it down and use it on the residential level. We've really pushed a lot of residential customers towards more home energy efficiency products, whether it be Energy Star appliances or geothermal or air source heat pumps, that may replace some of their gas-fired furnaces or especially fuel oil furnaces. We're able to show them dollar for dollar, here's where your best payback is.
Sam, thanks so much for talking to us. Thanks as well to our other guests and to Sensus for sponsoring this episode. For more information on this and other podcasts, visit electric.coop. Until next time, for Along Those Lines, I'm Scott Hoffman.
I'm Allie Bennett from Macon Electric Cooperative in Macon, Missouri. Thanks for listening to Along Those Lines. Subscribe and rate us on your favorite podcast app.